The Great Departure, the massive council chamber on Nexus. Prime had witnessed many historic moments over its 1,000-year existence, but today felt different. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the edge of the human observation deck, watching as the last of humanity's representatives prepared to leave forever. The crystalline walls that had once amplified the voices of hundreds of species now seemed to echo with an ominous silence. Ambassador Marcus Chen stepped up to the podium one final time, his weathered face showing no emotion as he gazed across. The assembled representatives, the Zephyrian Chancellor, Vextar, sat in his elevated throne, his scaled green hide gleaming under the chamber's bioluminescent lighting. His reptilian eyes held a mixture of satisfaction and carefully hidden concern. Around him, dozens of other species rustled, chittered, and hummed in their various forms of communication. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. For 237 years, humanity has served alongside you in this chamber. We have shared our knowledge, our resources, and our blood in service of galactic peace and prosperity. Trade Minister Colon of the Hibak clicked his mandibles dismissively. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the chamber's light as he leaned forward on his 6 legs. Humans speak of service, yet they have consistently opposed our natural expansion rights. They have prevented profitable ventures and disrupted established trade hierarchies. A murmur of agreement rippled through several delegations. The war merchants nodded their foreheads in unison, while the energy-based Loxarians flickered in patterns that translated to approval. Marcus had heard these arguments countless times before. We opposed the enslavement of weaker species, Marcus replied calmly. We prevented the strip mining of inhabited worlds. We stopped the trafficking of sentient beings. If you call that disruption, then we accept the label gladly. Chancellor Vextar's forked tongue flicked out as he spoke. The humans never understood the natural order of things. Strong species guide weak ones. This has been the way for millennia before your kind achieved spaceflight. Your interference has been ... problematic. Elena watched the proceedings from her position, her hand resting on the datapad that contained evacuation schedules for 47 human-controlled systems. As fleet commander for Sector 7, she had spent the last 6 months coordinating the most massive relocation in galactic history. Every human, civilian, every piece of critical technology, every trace of their presence was being systematically removed. Dr. Sarah Williams entered the observation deck quietly, her face drawn with exhaustion. She had spent the morning saying goodbye to the Melodian refugees on Haven Station, a peaceful species of crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonance. The Melodians are terrified, she whispered to Elena. Without our protection, the Thackeray will harvest their crystal cores within a month. Elena nodded grimly. The Melodians were just one of 17 species that had thrived under human protection. Their homeworld had been destroyed by a natural disaster decades ago, and human colonies had provided them sanctuary. Now they would be left to face the galaxy's predators alone. Back at the podium, Marcus continued his farewell address. We came to this council as newcomers, eager to learn and contribute. We brought gifts of technology, medicine, and scientific advancement. We shared freely what took us centuries to develop. In return, we asked only for the chance to build a better galaxy together. And you have been compensated appropriately, interjected Minister Zeloth of the Crystalline Collective. Her translucent form shimmered as she spoke. Human colonies received favorable trade agreements and territorial rights. Your species has profited significantly from council membership. Profit was never our goal, Marcus replied. We sought partnership, mutual respect, and the advancement of all sentient life. Instead, we found suspicion, resentment, and constant accusations of ulterior motives. Elena's communication device chirped softly. Captain Torres from the cargo vessel knew. Horizon was reporting completion of the medical facility evacuation on Kepler Station. The Advanced Trauma Center had served 12 different species for over 50 years, providing life-saving care regardless of a patient's ability to pay. Now it was being dismantled piece by piece, loaded onto human ships along with its irreplaceable medical databases. The real reason for humanity's departure went deeper than political disagreements. 3 months ago, the Council had voted to restrict human expansion into the frontier zone, claiming they needed to preserve cultural diversity among developing species. In reality, several Council members wanted exclusive access to rare resources. In those regions, when humans protested, they were accused of imperial ambitions. The breaking point came when the Council demanded that humans surrender their quantum communication network to shared governance. The network was humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization, enabling instant communication across thousands of light years. Human engineers had spent decades perfecting the technology, and they maintained its complex infrastructure through careful monitoring and constant upgrades. Chancellor Vextar had made it clear that other species should have equal control over such a vital system. When humans explained that the network required specific expertise and could catastrophically fail without proper maintenance, they were accused of technological hoarding and supremacist attitudes. We stand at a crossroads, Marcus continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Humanity has decided that we can no longer remain part of an organization that views our contributions with suspicion and our motives with contempt. We withdraw not in anger, but in sadness for what might have been. Dr. Williams received an urgent message on her personal communicator. The gentle singers, an aquatic species known for their beautiful telepathic harmonies, were requesting immediate evacuation from their research station in the Vega system. Thrakari raiders had been spotted at the system's edge, and the peaceful beings had no way to defend themselves. I have to go, Sarah whispered to Alina. The gentle singers need transport to human space before the Thrakari arrive. Alina nodded, knowing that Dr. Williams would risk everything to save the innocent beings she had worked with for years. This was typical of humanity's approach to galactic relations. While other species calculated profit margins and territorial advantages, humans formed genuine friendships with beings they barely understood. The evacuation was proceeding with characteristic human efficiency. Transport ships moved in carefully coordinated waves, removing not just people and equipment, but also the subtle infrastructure that had quietly supported galactic civilization for decades. Human-maintained relay stations, early warning sensors, emergency response networks, and peacekeeping installations were all being systematically shut down. Chancellor Vextar seemed unaware of the implications. The Council wishes humanity success in your future endeavors. We are confident that the galaxy will continue to prosper under our established leadership. Marcus smiled sadly. Chancellor, you have no idea what you're losing. Our departure will create a vacuum that you are not prepared to fill. The systems we maintained, the threats we held at bay, the delicate balances we preserved, all of this will now be your responsibility. Are you threatening us? Minister Colon S. Mandibles clicked aggressively. I am warning you, Marcus replied. For over 2 centuries, humanity has quietly solved problems you never knew existed. We maintained infrastructure you took for granted. We stood guard against dangers you had forgotten. Without us, you will remember why those threats were feared. In the first place, the chamber fell silent. Several older delegates shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recalling ancient histories they preferred to forget. Elder whisperoo stars from the ancient ethereal collective began to pulse with concerned light patterns, but his concerns were dismissed by the younger, more aggressive species. Alina received confirmation that the last human military units were departing the Centauri defense grid. The massive orbital fortifications had protected 3 inhabited systems from raider attacks for over a century. Now they stood empty, their weapons systems disabled. Their early warning arrays shut down. Captain Martinez of the survey ship Exploration reported similar updates from the Outer Rim territories. Human research stations, mining operations, and frontier settlements were all abandoning their positions. The carefully maintained supply chains, communication networks, and defensive perimeters that had enabled safe travel through previously dangerous regions were being systematically dismantled. Our final act, Marcus announced, is to provide you with detailed records of everything we are removing. Infrastructure specifications, threat assessments, maintenance schedules, and operational procedures. Study them carefully. You will need to understand these systems if you hope to maintain galactic stability. He activated his personal datapad, transmitting terabytes of information to the Council's central computers. The technical documentation covered everything from quantum relay maintenance to deep space monitoring protocols. Most Council members paid little attention to the data transfer, but Elder Whisper of Stars began immediately reviewing the files with growing alarm. Chancellor Vexstar waved his clawed hand dismissively. We appreciate the gesture, but the Council has its own technical capabilities. We do not require human expertise to maintain galactic infrastructure. Dr. Williams returned just as Marcus was concluding his address. Her face was pale with worry. The gentle singers made it to safety, she reported quietly, but their research station is gone. Thackeray raiders stripped it clean within hours of our departure. Alina wasn't surprised. The Thackeray had been testing human resolve for months, probing the edges of protected territories. Now they would discover that humanity's protective presence was gone forever. In closing, Marcus said, "We leave behind friends among many species, those beings who valued cooperation over domination, wisdom over aggression, and mutual respect over racial superiority. To them, we offer this promise. Humanity remembers its friends." He paused, letting the words sink in. Several delegates looked uncomfortable, perhaps wondering which category they fell into. We also leave behind those who saw us as obstacles to their ambitions. To them, we offer this warning. Be careful what you wish for. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers. Some threats require strength to oppose. Others require wisdom to avoid. Many require both. Without humans to stand guard, you will face these challenges alone. The ambassador closed his datapad and stepped back from the podium. The human delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. Our ships will depart within the hour. May the galaxy find the peace and prosperity it seeks. As Marcus walked toward the exit, a few delegates called out questions and protests, but he continued without looking back. Alina and Dr. Williams fell into step beside him, along with the rest of humanity's small but dedicated diplomatic staff. Behind them, the council chamber erupted into excited conversation. Some species were already discussing how to divide up human territories and resources. Others were planning new trade agreements without human interference. A few, like Elder Whisper of Stars, sat in worried silence, studying the technical data humanity had left behind. Elena's final status report showed green lights across all evacuation zones. The last human transport ships were jumping to hyperspace, carrying refugees, equipment, and centuries of accumulated knowledge back to human-controlled space. The operation had taken 6 months to complete, but it had been flawlessly executed. As their shuttle lifted off from Nexus Prime, Dr. Williams stared out at the massive station that had been the center of galactic government for 1,000 years. "Do you think they'll realize their mistake before it's too late?" Marcus shook his head sadly. "They'll realize it exactly when it's too late. That's the tragedy of pride. It blinds you to wisdom until disaster forces your eyes open." Elena activated the ship's long-range scanners for one final look at the regions they were abandoning. Already, she could detect increased radar activity near former human patrol routes. Several distress signals were coming from merchant vessels that had lost their escort protection. The Thrakari were mobilizing their battle fleets, probably planning raids on systems that had been under human protection for decades. The galaxy was about to rediscover why it had needed human protection in the first place. Elena just hoped some of their alien friends would survive the learning experience. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward the distant boundaries of human space, the 3 officers sat in contemplative silence. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of politics and power, unaware that the music was about to change forever. The great departure was complete. Now came the real test of galactic civilization's strength and wisdom. Elena feared they would find both qualities in shorter supply than anyone imagined. The Council had gotten exactly what it wanted: a galaxy without human interference. They would soon discover what that truly meant. The collapse begins 6 months after the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace. Commander Jake Sullivan crouched in the observation deck of the stealth vessel Shadow Watch, hidden deep within the asteroid belt of the Kepler system. His crew of 15 operated in complete silence, their advanced sensors monitoring galactic communications while remaining undetected. What they were witnessing would have broken the hearts of every human diplomat who had ever served in the Galactic Council. "Commander," whispered Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station, "we're intercepting another distress call from the Melodian Crystal Gardens. The Thrakari have started their harvesting operation." Jake moved to her station and watched the heartbreaking data stream across the screen. The peaceful Melodians, those beautiful crystalline beings who had created symphonies from pure light, were sending desperate pleas for help. Their harmonic distress songs created patterns of incredible beauty even as they begged for mercy from raiders, who saw them only as valuable resources to be stripped and sold through the main sensor array. Jake could see the massive Thrakari harvesting ships surrounding the Melodian sanctuary stations. The 4-headed war merchants worked with ruthless efficiency, using sonic disruptors to shatter the Melodians' crystalline forms, then collecting the fragments for sale to collectors. Across the galaxy, each broken crystal had once been a sentient being with centuries of memories, artistic achievements, and irreplaceable cultural knowledge. "Any response from the Galactic Council?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Lieutenant Foster's." The young face was grim as she replied, "The Melodians sent 43 separate appeals over the past week. The Council's response was to refer them to the Cultural Preservation Committee which is scheduled to meet in 3 months. Jake activated his secure quantum communicator to Earth Command, Shadow Watch to Fleet Admiral Rodriguez, the Melodian. Genocide is proceeding as predicted. Estimated casualties now exceed 200,000 beings. The Council remains paralyzed by bureaucratic procedure. The response came back within hours, carried by the quantum relay network that humans had, quietly maintained even after their official departure. Continue observation and documentation. Rules of engagement remain unchanged. Do not intervene directly. Command out. Jake stared at the communication panel for a long moment, every instinct screaming at him to act. His ship carried enough firepower to drive off the Thrakkery raiders, but his orders were clear. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's protector. The aliens had demanded independence from human oversight, and now they would experience the full consequences of that choice. On the other side of the galaxy, Chancellor Vextar sat in his private chambers on Nexus Prime, studying reports that made his scaled hide ripple with increasing anxiety. The economic data was catastrophic in ways his advisors had never anticipated. When humans had controlled the major shipping lanes, cargo moved efficiently between systems with losses to piracy running at less than 2%. Now, with human patrol ships gone and their early warning networks disabled, merchant vessels were being attacked daily. Chancellor called his chief aide, a smaller Zephyrian whose green scales flickered nervously. The Stellar Commerce Guild reports another massive convoy loss. 37 ships destroyed by the Black Nebula pirates near the old human checkpoint. At Junction 12, Vexter's yellow eyes narrowed with concern. Junction 12 had been a critical shipping lane protected for over a century by human rapid response. Vessels that could reach any distress call within 15 minutes. The pirates had never dared operate there while humans maintained their vigilant presence. Now the area had become a hunting ground where merchant captains transmitted their final messages to families they would never see again. What about the replacement patrol system approved by the Council? Vexter asked, though he suspected the answer would be disappointing. His aide's scales turned a darker shade of green, indicating embarrassment. The Zephyrian and Hivik fleets assigned to that sector are currently engaged in territorial disputes. Neither species will respond to distress calls while the other might claim salvage rights to rescued vessels. This was the fundamental problem Vexter had failed to anticipate. Human ships had responded to any threat regardless of which species was under attack. They had treated all peaceful merchants equally, protecting Thrakkery cargo haulers just as readily as Zephyrian luxury transports. The replacement patrol system had assumed other species would show the same impartiality. But ancient hatreds and territorial instincts proved stronger than Council directives. Asterisk. Dr. Sarah Williams worked frantically in the hidden research facility New Hope, a station built inside a dead comet in the outer reaches of the Vega system. Officially, she had left with the rest of humanity's diplomatic mission. Unofficially, she had remained behind to help the peaceful species who couldn't defend themselves against the galaxy's predators. What she was discovering made her increasingly desperate about the aliens. Survival prospects. Her communication intercepts told a story of rapid technological decline across dozens of star systems. Species throughout the galaxy had become dependent on human-designed systems without realizing it. Human engineers had quietly improved alien technology for decades, making small modifications that increased efficiency, reliability, and safety. Now, without human maintenance and upgrades, these systems were beginning to fail in spectacular fashion. Computer, "Display the HFY shield generator incident," Sarah commanded. The holographic display showed the devastating explosion that had destroyed Research Station Prime in the HFY home system. The station's administrators had attempted to modify human-designed shield generators to increase their power output. The modification had worked for exactly 23 minutes before the entire facility vanished in a ball of plasma visible from 3 star systems away. 15,000 HFY scientists and technicians had died in that explosion, along with irreplaceable research data spanning for centuries. The incident report blamed human sabotage and deliberately flawed technology designed to fail. But Sarah could see the real problem in the technical specifications. The HFY had never understood the sophisticated safety systems built into human designs. They had removed what they thought were unnecessary components, not realizing these were fail-safes that prevented catastrophic overload. Similar incidents were occurring throughout the galaxy with increasing frequency. The energy-based leviathans had tried to enhance human communication arrays and accidentally created a feedback loop that disrupted their entire planetary network, leaving billions of beings unable to communicate with their government. The aquatic abyssal had modified human water purification systems and poisoned 3 of their colony worlds, forcing the evacuation of 2 million civilians. Each species blamed human treachery, rather than their own lack of understanding. The technical documentation that Ambassador Chen had provided during humanity's departure remained largely unread, dismissed as potentially sabotaged information. Designed to create dependence on human expertise, Captain Zereth of the Abyssal Defense Force floated in her command center aboard the massive aquatic vessel Deep Current, reviewing tactical reports that filled her with growing dread. Her species had evolved in the deepest ocean trenches of their homeworld, developing advanced biotechnology and peaceful philosophies based on the harmony of underwater ecosystems. They had never been warriors, relying instead on human protection when conflicts arose. Now the Devourer swarm had returned from the dark spaces between galaxies, and the Abyssal faced extinction. The Devourers were an ancient enemy that humanity had fought and defeated multiple times over the past century, driving them back into the void where they fed on cosmic radiation and plotted their return. These were not beings in any conventional sense, but rather collective intelligences that consumed entire worlds, absorbing the life force of every living thing before moving on to the next target. "Captain," reported her sensor specialist, his bioluminescent patches flickering with fear, "the Devourer fleet has consumed the Kepler Prime system. All 8 inhabited worlds have been stripped clean. Estimated casualties exceed 6 billion beings across 4 different species." Zereth's tentacles curled in distress as she updated her report for the Galactic Council. The Devourer ships were massive constructs that defied conventional understanding of physics and biology. Each vessel was larger than most moons, powered by the absorbed life energy of conquered civilizations. Their hulls were covered with organic neural networks that could process information faster than any computer, while their weapons could drain the life force from entire planets. The Devourer had first appeared in galactic space over 3 centuries ago, beginning a reign of terror that seemed unstoppable. Entire sectors had been consumed, ancient civilizations wiped from existence, and the remaining species had lived in constant fear of their return. Only humanity's arrival had changed the balance of power. Human military tacticians had developed weapons and strategies specifically designed to counter the Devourer's unique abilities. They had built specialized ships with quantum-shielded hulls that could resist life-drain weapons. They had created neural scramblers that disrupted the Devourer's collective consciousness. Most importantly, they had established early warning networks that could detect devourer scout ships before they could report back to the main fleet. For over a century, human forces had driven back every devourer incursion, gradually pushing them beyond the galactic rim into the dark spaces where they could only feed on stellar radiation. The galaxy had grown comfortable, forgetting the ancient terror that had once threatened all life. Now the devourers had returned to find their greatest enemies gone. The human early warning networks were shut down. The specialized anti-devourer weapons were no longer being manufactured. The rapid response fleets that had once intercepted every incursion had vanished completely. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session after emergency session, but each meeting ended in the same bitter stalemate. Chancellor Vexstar had called 18 separate assemblies in the past 2 weeks, and none had produced anything resembling effective action. The Galactic Defense Initiative cannot function without proper coordination, announced General Korax of the Thrakari military caste, his forehead speaking in unison. We need unified command structure, shared intelligence networks, and standardized equipment protocols. Trade Minister S. mandibles clicked in irritation. The Hivok Collective possesses the largest industrial capacity in the galaxy. We should lead this initiative, not take orders from species with inferior manufacturing capabilities. Manufacturing capability gained through the exploitation of slave labor, countered Thoughtsinger Prime from the ancient ethereal collective. Perhaps if we approached this crisis with wisdom instead of violence, we might find a peaceful solution that preserves all life. The debate continued for hours while more star systems fell to the devourers. Each species had valid concerns, but none were willing to compromise their perceived advantages. The Thrakari wanted military dominance to expand their territorial holdings. The Hivok demanded technological superiority to maintain their industrial monopolies. The Luxarians insisted on energy-based solutions that other species couldn't understand. The Abyssal required aquatic environments that most beings found impossible to survive in. Commander Sullivan watched the crisis unfold from his hidden observation post, documenting the systematic collapse of galactic civilization. His training helped him understand the cultural factors driving the aliens' inability to cooperate effectively. Each species had evolved in isolation, developing survival strategies based on competition rather than cooperation. Only humanity had learned to work with fundamentally different types of beings as equals rather than competitors or resources. The human approach to interspecies relations had been revolutionary in ways the aliens never fully appreciated, while other species formed alliances based on mutual advantage or shared enemies. Humans had built genuine friendships with beings they barely understood. They had protected the weak, not for profit or political gain, but because they believed all sentient life had value. Dr. Williams received an encrypted message from the surviving Gentle Singers, now refugees in the Andromeda research colony. Their telepathic harmonies had been forever changed by the trauma of watching their research station destroyed and their colleagues murdered by Thrakari raiders. The beautiful songs that had once brought joy to millions of beings across dozens of species now carried notes of grief and terror that no translation could adequately convey. The silence spreads like a plague, the Gentle Singers reported through quantum-encrypted harmonics. The Melodians sing no more. The Thought Weavers have lost their ability to share memories. The Light Dancers hide in caves, afraid to create beauty that might attract predators. The galaxy grows dark as art dies and wisdom is forgotten. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she read the report. These weren't just statistics about casualties and economic losses. This was the systematic destruction of unique forms, of consciousness that had taken millions of years to evolve. When a species like the Melodians died, their way of perceiving and expressing reality died with them. The universe became smaller, less diverse, less beautiful. The crisis reached a tipping point when the Devourer fleet reached the core systems of galactic civilization. Their biomechanical ships emerged from hyperspace near the industrial world of Forge Prime, home to 12 billion beings and the primary manufacturing center for advanced technology. The planet's inhabitants had minutes to comprehend their fate before the life-drain weapons began their terrible work. Chancellor Vextar watched the tactical displays in his command center with growing horror. Forge Prime's defensive fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy after humanity's departure, lasted exactly 17 minutes against the Devourer assault. The aliens' energy shields provided no protection against weapons designed to drain life force rather than destroy matter. Their quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons had no effect on ships powered by absorbed consciousness from billions of devoured beings. Within 6 hours, Forge Prime was a dead world. Its vast cities stood empty but intact, their streets littered with the desiccated remains of beings whose life energy had been consumed by the ancient enemy. The planet's industrial capacity, built up over centuries of careful development, now served the Devourers as they converted the manufacturing facilities to produce more of their terrible ships. Chancellor called his aide, his scales now pale. With terror, we're receiving reports of Devourer fleets approaching 17 more core systems. They're moving faster than our intelligence predicted, consuming everything in their path. Vextar's clawed hands trembled as he reviewed the tactical projections. At this rate, the Devourer fleet would reach Nexus Prime within 2 weeks. The galactic capital, center of civilization for 1,000 years, would join the growing list of dead worlds unless something dramatic changed. For the first time since humanity's departure, Chancellor Vextar began to truly understand what they had lost. Human military planners had spent decades developing contingency plans for exactly this scenario. They had maintained early warning networks specifically designed to detect Devourer scout ships. They had stockpiled specialized weapons in hidden caches throughout the galaxy. Most importantly, they had established rapid response protocols that could coordinate defensive efforts across multiple species and star systems. All of that institutional knowledge and strategic infrastructure was gone, taken away when the Council had decided that human presence was unnecessary and potentially threatening to galactic independence. Dr. Williams intercepted a quantum-encrypted transmission that made her blood run cold. The message was from Commander Sullivan's observation post, reporting that the Devourers had somehow acquired detailed intelligence about galactic defensive capabilities. They were targeting key infrastructure nodes with surgical precision, destroying communication hubs, supply depots, and command centers in exactly the right sequence to maximize chaos and prevent coordinated resistance. Someone was helping them. Someone with access to the highest levels of galactic intelligence was providing the Devourers with information they could never have obtained on their own. The ancient enemy had found allies among the very species they intended to consume. As panic spread through the core systems and refugee fleets began streaming toward the galactic rim, Chancellor Vextar made the most difficult decision of his long political career. He activated the quantum communicator that connected directly to human space, a system the aliens had been told was disconnected after humanity's departure. The channel remained open, The humans had been listening all along. "This is Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Council," he transmitted, his proud voice cracking with desperation. "We formally request immediate assistance from the Human Federation. The galaxy is dying, and we cannot save it alone." The response came back within minutes. Carried across impossible distances by technology the aliens still didn't fully understand. Message received, Chancellor. We'll be in touch. For the first time in 6 months, Vextar allowed himself to hope. The humans were coming back. The question was whether any of the galaxy would still be alive when they arrived. Asterisk.